The train pulled away with a loud, tired hiss, throwing dust into the face of the woman left standing behind. Her gloved hand tightened around a worn satchel, her knuckles pale under the lace. She didn't cry, not yet. Crying would mean she still believed someone might come back for her. But the platform was empty now. Only the wind stirred, and a few townspeople watched from a distance, whispering behind narrowed eyes and tilted smiles. Clara Hensley didn't move as the last sound of the train faded into the hills. She was a large woman, and the sun didn't treat her kindly. Her figure caught the light, casting longer shadows than most. Her pale lavender dress pulled at the seams, neatly pressed despite the hours of travel. She'd picked the color because the catalog said it softened round faces. But no color could soften what stood out the most. She was alone. Left at a quiet stop that smelled of heat, old smoke, and let down. No one came. Not the man who'd sent 6 eager letters. Not the one who said her size didn't matter, only her honesty. He wasn't there. No flowers. No ring. Not even kindness. She pushed her trunk closer to the bench, the old wood groaning beneath the weight. It was borrowed from her aunt, once painted sky blue, now chipped and worn like everything else she had brought with her. A woman with less pride might have asked for a ride to the nearest inn. But Clara sat still, eyes forward, breath steady. 2 boys jumped down from a nearby freight cart, wild and muddy, their laughter sharp in the dry air. One chased the other until he almost tripped over her trunk. He stumbled, then stopped, squinting up at her. She met his gaze, calm and steady. Her mother used to say kindness didn't need to shout. The boy tilted his head. "You the new school teacher?" "No," Clara said softly. "I was supposed to be someone's bride." The boy blinked, confused. "He late?" Clara didn't smile. "No, sweetheart. He's not coming." A deeper voice broke in. "Ben, don't pester the lady." A man stepped forward, his coat worn, boots dusty, eyes tired like they'd seen too many hard winters. His jaw was strong, shadowed in dark stubble. He didn't look like someone trying to impress. Just a man trying to make it through another day. "Eli Walker," he said, tipping his hat. "Ma'am." "Sir." The boy rushed back to the wagon, but Eli stayed. "You need a ride somewhere?" he asked. "I don't suppose you know a Mr. Silas Grant?" Clara asked, trying to sound light, though her fingers clutched her satchel tighter. Eli shook his head. "No Grants here. And to be honest, I wouldn't trust anyone named Silas much anyhow." A tight, bitter laugh escaped her lips, low and sharp. "Well, I trusted him with my future." "Silly me." He softened his voice. "You came all this way alone?" Clara gave a small nod. 3 trains. 1 stagecoach. 2 months of letters. 1 promise, broken. He didn't speak right away. Didn't offer empty comfort. Just stood there with a quiet stillness that didn't rush to fix anything. She liked that. It was the kind of silence that gives sorrow space to breathe. "My name's Eli Walker," he said at last. "I've got a farm up north. 2 boys. A good horse. And a roof that's begging for patching before the rains hit. Wasn't planning on picking up anything more today than nails and flour." Clara looked at him. "And yet here we are." He gave a small nod. "You thinking of waiting long, Miss Hensley?" "Clara Hensley," she replied. His smile was faint, unsure. "Miss Hensley. Clara will do, given the way things turned out." "All right then, Clara." She held his gaze. There was no pity there. Just tired eyes. And maybe something more, something like respect. Like 2 people who knew what it felt like. To be slapped by the same hard wind. "Do you have anywhere to go?" he asked gently. "No," she said. "I see." He didn't push. Didn't fill the air with noise. The wind picked up, tossing dust across the floorboards between them. After a long moment he spoke again, voice low. "My wife passed 2 winters back. Flu took her quick. She left me with 2 boys and a mule that bites." Clara folded her hands in her lap, unsure what he was leading up to. "I tried," Eli began, voice steady but tired. "Asked neighbors. But folks don't stay when the work's heavy and there's no comfort waiting at the end of the day." His eyes shifted to the general store. "My boys, they need a woman's voice around. Someone solid. Someone who doesn't flinch at the hard stuff." Clara looked at him closely, silent. "I'm not handing you pity," Eli said quickly. "You don't strike me as someone who can take any more of that." Her jaw tightened, but she didn't look away. "I'm offering a name. A roof. A chance to be more than the woman some fool left standing on a platform. "You're asking me to marry you?" she whispered. "Not asking," he said. "Just saying it straight. It's your choice." She blinked. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," Eli replied. "You didn't cry when he didn't show. You sat tall. Kept your pride even when everything cracked beneath you." Clara turned her head, her voice low. "I wanted to cry. But you didn't." Out by the wagon, his sons waved. Eli followed their movement. "Be their mother," he said. "I don't know how," she admitted. "Neither do I. But we'll learn." She should have laughed, should have called him crazy or desperate. But something deep in her chest moved. Something old and hurt and quiet. Eli didn't look like a man throwing out soft promises. He didn't look like a man who needed fixing. He looked like someone ready to share the weight of life with another. "I'm not thin," she said at last. "I can see that. I've been told I'm too much. And I've been told I'm not enough." They stood quietly again, the world holding its breath around them. "You got a preacher in town?" Clara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Eli nodded with a half-smile. "Owes me 2 favors and a winter coat. I figure that's enough to cover it." She took a shaky breath, smoothed the front of her dress with trembling hands. "Then let's get it done before I change my mind." He held out his arm. She hesitated just a second before taking it. "Clara Hensley," he said gently as they started toward the chapel, "I think today came to break you. But there's not a single broken thing standing beside me." Her throat tightened. "You're either the kindest man I've ever met, or the most foolish." He grinned. "Maybe I'm both." She laughed, soft and real, and the sound surprised even her. They walked past the townspeople, through stares and whispered talk, past tilted heads and raised brows. The sun dipped lower behind them, shadows stretching long on the ground, those kinds of shadows that show up right before something breaks, or something begins. Clara didn't know what waited ahead. Storm or saving, she couldn't tell. But this time she wouldn't be walking into it alone. The chapel smelled like candle wax and worn-down wood. The windows rattled in the breeze, unsure of the promises being made inside. Clara stood stiff beside Eli, hands clasped tight, knuckles pale. The preacher, a round man with watery eyes and a hat too big for his head, rushed through the words like he was blessing a mule instead of marrying 2 strangers with nothing but nerves and quiet hope. Eli's boys stood nearby. One held prairie daisies with a grip too tight. The other sucked his thumb and stared with quiet suspicion. They didn't really understand what was going on, just that their father spoke in the voice he used when storms broke fences. Firm. Final. Clara repeated the vows, her voice steady until that one moment. "Do you take this man?" the preacher asked. She paused, only a breath. Eli didn't move. Didn't blink. Just looked at her with eyes full of quiet, steady waiting. Not pity. Not pressure. That stillness gave her courage. "I do," she said. Not because she had to, but because she chose to. Their kiss was small. Barely there. But something passed between them, sealed in silence. The preacher gave a nod and a muttered, "That'll do," as he stepped back with a rustle of robes. Outside, Clara blinked against the light. The train station stood in the distance, reminding her how fast life could shift, from waiting to walking away. Eli offered his hand again. She took it. His skin was rough, the kind of rough that came from work, not harm. They climbed into the wagon. His oldest helped her up with care surprising for a boy raised around dirt and quiet. Clara felt the stares as they rolled out of town. Eyes behind curtains. Voices behind hands. Words like desperate and foolish thrown into the wind. But she didn't turn around. The road ahead curled through dry grass and scattered trees. The wind tugged at the leaves, the sky turning from bright blue to soft gold. They rode in silence, the boys asleep behind them. "You still breathing over there?" Eli asked after a while. "I think so. You did good back there." "I didn't faint, if that's what you mean." He chuckled. "That too." The quiet that followed wasn't heavy. Just space. Open. They climbed a slow ridge where the land stretched wide. Clara shifted. "You said you lost your wife." 2 winters ago," he said. "Flu came through like wildfire. Took half the town. Took her fast." "I'm sorry." She was kind. Never raised her voice, even when I gave her reason. He looked at her. "You don't have to be her, Clara. I didn't marry you to fill her place." Then why did you marry me? He thought a moment. Because I needed someone strong enough to carry more than just water buckets. Someone who wouldn't fold the moment life turned hard. You think I'm strong? She asked. I think you've been standing on broken ground so long, you don't even know it's you holding everything up. Clara didn't answer. She couldn't. Her throat tightened and her eyes burned, not from dust but something deeper. The sun sank lower as Eli pointed to a hill where a crooked fence split the slope. That's home. The cabin was worn. The roof patched with mismatched wood, the porch slumped to the right. Chickens scattered as they pulled in, and a tired old dog barked twice before recognizing them. Inside it smelled of pine soap, wood smoke and old bread. Her trunk had already been set by the wall. A rocker creaked in the corner. She stepped in carefully, like she didn't belong there yet. Eli showed her where the water was, where the kettle sat, where to hang her coat. No rush. No fuss. Just quiet movements like a man used to living with memories. That night they ate beans and cornbread by firelight. His boys, Jonah and Levi, sat near the hearth. Clara watched them across the table, unsure of where she fit. When she reached for their plates, Levi flinched. I won't hurt you, she whispered. Eli looked up. They're not used to kindness. Give him time. I'm not their mother. No, Eli said gently, but they'll learn your voice soon enough. Later he offered her the bed. I'll take the chair, he said, grabbing a blanket. We just got married, she said, careful. That don't mean I get to ask more than you're willing to give. Clara nodded. And for the first time her chest let go. The days that followed were rough and real. She learned to gather eggs from hens that pecked like old school teachers. Chopped vegetables, mended shirts, swept the floor while Levi followed behind, silent as a shadow. At night, she'd read aloud from her worn little prayer book, her voice soft and steady. Eli didn't bow his head or whisper amen. He just sat still beside her, present in a way that didn't need words. One morning, as Clara pinned laundry to the line, laughter echoed from the barn. Jonah was grinning wide, cheeks streaked with dirt, while she chased after a goat with more stubbornness than sense. Eli leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, smiling like a man watching peace unfold. She likes you, Jonah giggled, pointing at the goat. Probably thinks I'm family, Clara huffed, wiping sweat from her brow. You're handling it better than most, Eli said, stepping toward her. Clara glanced at him, half smiling. I've never been easy either. He held her gaze. Good. That night, when sleep didn't come, Clara wrapped herself in a shawl and stepped onto the porch. The sky stretched wide and quiet, full of stars. The land held still like it was listening. She heard Eli's footsteps behind her. You ever miss the city? He asked gently. I miss knowing what comes next. He nodded. Out here we just take it slow. One step at a time. She paused. I keep wondering if he'll come back, the man who left me. If he does, Eli said, voice calm, he'll see exactly what he gave up. And I'll be standing right here when he does. Clara looked at him. You don't really know me. No, he said, but I see how you move through each day like it matters. I see the way that boy sleeps better with you around. My house doesn't feel so empty anymore. Her voice nearly caught. She blinked fast, then gave a quiet laugh. That's a lot to say about a big woman with a busted trunk. Eli stepped in closer. It's never been about the weight. It's how you carried it. Their eyes met and held. Something shifted in the space between them, uncertain, heavy with feeling. I ain't asking you to love me, Eli said, his voice low. But I won't let anyone take what's become mine. Clara didn't answer. Instead, she leaned against the porch rail beside him, shoulder to shoulder, staring at the stars. They stayed like that until the cold nudged them inside. And deep inside her, somewhere quiet, still healing, she felt it, a change. Not because someone finally picked her, but because, maybe for the first time, she picked herself. Frost arrived early that year. One morning, Clara woke to windows glazed in silver, ice curling in the corners like old lace. She wrapped her shawl tighter and fed logs to the stove, urging it to glow again. Outside, the wind snapped and screamed across the open land. Eli was already out back, splitting wood with that steady focus she'd come to know so well. The boys were still asleep, tucked deep under quilts, their breath soft and misty in the cold. Clara poured hot water into a tin bowl and washed her face. And in the ripples she saw it, something different. Not thinner. Not smaller, but steadier. As if the land had begun to carve her into something solid. Something that belonged. Later that morning, Eli came back holding a letter, creased, mud-stained, and stiff in his hand like it might bite. He didn't speak, just passed it to Clara. She wiped her hands on her apron before taking it. The handwriting was tight and sharp, full of pride. To Clara Hensley. I hear you went through with it. That you dared to wear the name that was meant to be mine. You'll regret that. I'm coming. The signature at the bottom was quick and angry, but clear. Silas Grant. The name hit her like a stone to the gut. She hadn't heard it since the day the train left her standing in dust and silence. Now, out of nowhere, he remembered she was real. Clara read the letter again, slower this time. Her lips pressed tight. She folded it once, then again, each crease neat and sure. Then she handed it back to Eli. Well, she said calmly, the rat sniffing around. Eli didn't return the smile. He knows where to find us. He might come with fists. Or papers. Then he'll find me standing beside a man with a rifle, she said. Eli sat at the table, rubbing the edge of the letter with his thumb like he was trying to wear it down. If he pushes this, we need to be ready. He's got nothing to push, Clara snapped. He left me. Left me standing there like I was nothing. That letter, Clara said, her voice calm but firm, is the sound of a man realizing someone else saw worth in what he threw away. Eli nodded slowly. Even so, I'd rather he not come here thinking we're sheep. Then we show him we're wolves. 4 days passed and Eli moved like a man bracing for a storm. He repaired the fences, sharpened every blade, and cleaned his rifle until it shined like steel thunder. Clara prepared too, not with weapons but with resolve. She taught the boys how to stay still and silent if trouble came. She kept her gaze fixed on the edges of the land while hanging laundry, listening hard for hoofbeats or raised voices from the road. The unease crept into everything, the meals, the sleep, even the wind. Clara found herself jumping at every knock, every far-off shout. One evening, as the sky turned red and purple, Eli pressed something into her hand, a revolver, small and cold, fitting into her palm like a quiet promise. You don't have to use it, he said. Sometimes just knowing it's there is enough. Clara stared down at it. I've never held a gun before. You have now. She looked up, jaw steady. I don't want to hurt anyone. Neither do I, Eli said. But if he thinks he can drag me back like I'm something to be owned, she said, voice low and fierce, I'll stop him. Eli held her gaze. He won't get close enough to try. And the next afternoon, the storm finally came. A cloud of dust rose far off, long before the sound of hooves reached the porch. Clara was stirring stew when Eli froze at the window. Riders, he said low. He stepped outside, rifle across his shoulder. Clara followed, her revolver hidden beneath her apron. Jonah and Levi watched from the barn loft, still as stone, just like they'd been told. 3 riders approached. Silas Grant led, sitting high in the saddle like a man posing for a portrait. His black coat snapped in the wind. His face was sharp, smug, untouched by real work. The 2 men behind him were heavy-set and silent, hired muscle with no names worth knowing. Eli stood at the fence. You've got 10 seconds to speak your piece, he called. Silas slid down from his horse, slowly, like he wanted to be watched. He adjusted his gloves with flair. You must be the man who scooped up what I left behind. Clara's fingers twitched, but Eli stayed steady. You've got no business here. Silas took a step forward. I've got every right. She came here to marry. I paid for the ticket. That makes her mine. Clara stepped up beside Eli, her chin high. You're owed nothing but the shame you ran from. Silas's smile curled, brittle. You think that ring makes a difference? There's no marriage certificate. No official record. She's still free under the law. Then we'll make it official, Eli said, voice like iron. Silas's eyes darted to Mara. You honestly think you belong out here? Surrounded by dirt, half-wild boys, and a man who smells like livestock? You were built for finer things. Mara laughed, low and sudden, almost surprising herself. I was built for freedom. And I got it the moment you didn't bother to come. Silas's jaw clenched. Eli shifted, weight settling into his boots. You want to keep talking or see how this ends with lead? One of Silas's men made a move toward his hip. But Mara already had her revolver drawn. The hammer snapped back, crisp and final. The man froze mid-motion. I'm no sharpshooter, Mara said, steady and calm. But I don't need to be when you're this close. Eli stepped beside her, steady as a wall. You done here? He asked, never taking his eyes off Silas. Silas's nostrils flared. His confidence wavered as his men shifted, unsure. I'll return, he spat. With documents. With force. You won't stay hidden behind this patch of dirt and your loud wife forever. Bring what you want, Mara said, lowering her weapon. You'll still find me standing. Silas didn't reply. He climbed onto his horse, sharp and angry. His men followed behind, slower now, cautious, glancing back. The dust rolled behind them like a guilty trail. Eli didn't look away until they vanished. Clara's hands trembled as she tucked the revolver back beneath her apron. You holding up? He asked. No, she said, quiet. But I'm still here. You are? He nodded, brushing his fingertips across her sleeve. And you didn't just stay standing, Clara. You stood your ground. She let out a soft laugh, faint and shaky. My shot was awful. Then next time we'll practice on tin cans. That night, the table was quiet. Not from fear, but the kind of silence that follows after taking something back that was nearly lost. The boys leaned against Clara as she read from her prayer book, her voice calm. Eli watched from his chair, and for the first time since their vows, he didn't see someone abandoned. He saw someone who remained, who faced the wind and didn't flinch, someone slowly realizing she had worth. Snow had started to fall, light and soundless, laying a soft cover over the Walker land. It painted the barn roof, eased the sharpness from fence posts, and hushed the wide fields like a lullaby. Clara stood at the kitchen window, hands wrapped around a chipped mug of thin coffee, eyes on Eli as he cleared a narrow path in the drifts. His pace was slow, his shoulders still sore, but every step was sure. Inside, the boys were curled near the fire, dragging sticks across soot-stained stone. Levi had drawn something that just barely resembled their goat. Clara smiled just a little, tired but real. Some mornings it still felt unreal. Not the land or the roof overhead, but the stillness, the quiet space where she didn't have to earn her worth, where no one questioned whether she belonged. Her hand brushed over the stack of worn books by the side table. A week ago, a traveling seller had passed through with a wagon of used pages, and Clara had traded preserves and mended shirts for primers and an old hymnal. Now each Sunday 3 neighbor children burst through her door, cheeks red, boots muddy, ready to learn from the woman who once sat alone with nothing but a satchel and a silent trunk. Eli stepped through the doorway, knocking snow from his boots. Without a word, he hung his coat and pressed a kiss to her cheek. He did it every morning now, not as habit but something softer. Familiar, never dull. His lips stayed a moment longer than needed. To him she never blended into the walls. He looked at her like he still couldn't believe she was real. Outside, the wind curled through the eaves, sharp and knowing. Clara's hands tightened around her mug. Eli caught the movement. You okay? She nodded, slow. Just the season. He understood. Almost a year had passed since she stepped off that train, heart in her throat and no plan beyond survival. Since the letter, the chapel, the promise spoken between 2 strangers in the wake of separate storms. Now they sat together on the porch, side by side, the chairs creaking in rhythm, the silence between them full of all the things they no longer had to say. The boys tore down the snow-packed trail, flinging handfuls at each other, laughter echoing like bells. Eli slid his arm behind Clara's back. She leaned in, inhaling the familiar mix of pine and worn leather. Then the rider appeared, a lone figure on a dark horse, no dust cloud, no company. Just one man cutting black against the pale. Eli rose slowly. Inside, he said, steady as stone, eyes fixed on the figure. Clara didn't argue. She guided the boys in, bolted the door, but didn't retreat. Through the glass, she watched Eli step off the porch, rifle low but ready. The man dismounted with a care that felt rehearsed. His coat shifted with the wind. Silas. Frost clung to the edges of his hat. His cheeks were red with cold, but his stare hadn't thawed a bit. I came alone, he called. Figured that'd sit better with you. Eli didn't answer. Silas stepped forward, slow and deliberate. I always thought I'd be the one to shape her into something. You were wrong. A humorless smile touched Silas's mouth. And yet you did it. You married her. Built something out of dust. Eli didn't move. Silas glanced toward the window. She's tougher than I remembered. When I left her at that station, I figured she'd fall apart. Catch a train back east. Vanish. She didn't. No, Silas muttered, eyes narrowing. She rooted herself instead. Became something solid. Eli met his gaze, unmoving. She's got you to thank for that. She owes me nothing. The silence that followed felt like the space between thunder and lightning, full of what neither dared say. Silas exhaled slowly. I didn't come to claim her, Silas said. I know that door's long shut. I only wanted to see the man who stood where I used to. You weren't replaced, Eli replied. You were written out. Silas flinched, but there was no fire left in him. You'll leave now, Eli added. Not just from this land, but from her story too. I already have, Silas murmured. The cabin door opened. Clara stepped into the wind, her shawl tugged wild around her shoulders. But she stood steady. If you came to beg forgiveness, don't waste the breath. Silas met her eyes. For once his pride slipped. I'm not sorry I left, he said. But I regret never seeing what I had. Clara's face didn't change. I'm not sorry either. Silas gave a short nod, turned without another word, and climbed into his saddle. No final threat. Just hooves pressing cold into the earth. Eli exhaled as he stepped back onto the porch. A breath held too long. Clara took his hand. You didn't have to come outside, he said. I needed to, she answered. He had to see. See what? That I didn't vanish. That I found ground. That I became something more. He nodded. You did. That night, the fire burned steady and warm. Jonah and Levi leaned into Clara's sides as Eli carved a wooden horse by the hearth. She looked at the boys, safe, tucked close, and knew it for certain. There was no turning back. Not for any of them. Eli laid the carving aside and settled beside her. Neither spoke. Outside, the wind pressed hard against the walls, but inside, there was only the steady creak of the rocker and the soft rise and fall of children's breathing. I love you, Eli said, quiet and plain, like stating a fact. Clara turned, surprised. You do? He nodded. Didn't realize it until I pictured life without you. Not in anger, not in a fight, just waking up and not finding you there. That hollowed me out. She gave a small, trembling smile. I've been wanting to say it too. But I was scared. You don't have to be scared anymore. Clara reached up, fingers brushing his cheek. I love you too. More than I ever thought my heart could hold. He kissed her then, not a polite brush but a deep, certain kiss. A kiss that said he saw her completely, the marks, the weight, the past, and none of it changed his choice. She wasn't a burden taken out of pity. She wasn't a favor or a fix. She was his wife. His match. The woman who kept the fire lit and the boys tucked close. The soul of this place. Outside, snow piled high. The prairie hushed under white. But within the Walker home, beneath its creaky roof and crackling fire, love had sunk its roots deep. Quiet. Unshaken. And meant to last. If you loved the story, ensure to like and subscribe. Also click on the next video showing up on your screen for more inspiring and soul-touching stories.